on HQ live from the Super Bowl. And for 30 teams, Super Bowl is not the reality. A mock draft from Ryan Wilson, well, that is. Taking a look at his latest top 10, I'm told version 6 of his most recent mock, as we are 70-some days away from names being called and this man getting some sleep. But for now, we say hello to Ryan Wilson. Danny Kanell joining us as well. Tommy Tran in the mix here at the foot of the Bellagio Fountains. Ryan, you know how it goes. As a fan of the Charter franchise, not just the mocks, but your phone blowing up from me quite often. Let's start at number 1 with the Bears and that pick. Quite recently, a piece of news in Washington that could lead us to believe that that pick would be moved. Take us through your thought process, and what might that cost Washington to move up the 1 pick?
So I've gone back and forth on this, and Danny, I think you would agree, because we're talking about what is Justin Fields' future in Chicago, because there were some good things to be happy about last year and some things that you were concerned about, but Cliff Kingsbury's now in Washington. He has a history with Caleb Williams for their time together at USC. Also, by the way, I'm going to put you on the spot. What's the comp for Caleb?
Patrick Mahomes?
Patrick Mahomes. Who did Cliff Kingsbury coach at Texas Tech?
One Patrick Mahomes.
So there's a lot of overlap there. So if you're trading down to be the Chicago Bears, you're all in on Justin Fields, and you're stockpiling picks. And the latest version I had Washington's number 2 and number 40 and a 2025 first rounder. Maybe that gets it done. Maybe the price of poker is more than that. We'll find out. But then Washington is able to move up. They have Cliff Kingsbury in-house, new head coach, new GM, new ownership, and then you restart the franchise with a ton of cap space, and you are ready to go in a division arguably wide open after how Philadelphia ended things last year.
I don't know if I'm going to go as far as Les Snead and say bleep them picks, but I do think picks are overrated. If you have a guy that you want, go get him.
Right.
Do whatever it takes. And unfortunately, I'm sure the Bears are sitting there understanding that, and they're going to try to do whatever they can to make you overpay. But even if you slightly overpay, if you've got a guy that you want to build your franchise around with new ownership, with a quarterback coach and offensive coordinator that you think has a history with him, that's going to keep him happy and have him succeed at the next level, then by all means, go make that move. So I think it is probably eventually, it's inevitable. We already saw the subsequent Instagram story from Caleb Williams, already, congratulating Cliff Kingsbury, putting it out there. It does feel like it's going to happen.
You mentioned the social media post, by the way. He was very selective choosing the Kingsbury post with the Commanders logo. I think that's by design, right, DK? That's not on accident, we think.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's definitely him, alluding or at least hinting at this would be a guy I would love to play for. And I do think having some familiarity relationship-wise, but also in the system, will make that transition smoother. It's not going to be easy for anybody, and we saw that happen last year with Bryce Young, but having familiarity with the system, I think, is crucial for any young quarterback. And if you've got somebody that's going to implement a system, even if it's going to be different than what he was running with Lincoln Riley, but they'll pull some concepts for that, some language from that'll have some familiarity, that'll make it a little bit easier in this massive jump.
So this mock is under the impression that, again, the Bears stick with Justin Fields, and then they trade down to allow another team to take Caleb Williams. Then they have number 2 then, Ryan Wilson. Where do they go from here?
I'm watching Bears fan Joe
side-eye
me.
Tell me more
about how you solve this problem. Because Shane Waldron, the new offensive coordinator, he did a great job with Geno Smith. Geno took huge strides. Geno obviously had something to do with that. But if you're all in on Justin, why not get him another playmaker? And Danny, you talked about this before the break, before we came on here. Marvin Harrison Jr. is the layup for me. DJ Moore, Marvin Harrison Jr. Chris Beatty's the new wide receivers coach from L.A. to Chicago. He was with DJ Moore at Maryland. And I think this offense has a chance to take the step to the next level. Cole Kmet is there. Roshan Johnson's going into year 2. There's a lot of reasons for optimism. And Stephon Diggs, Josh Allen, Jamar Chase, Joe Burrow. We've seen what happens when you pair an unbelievable playmaking, game-changing wide receiver with a young quarterback who's getting better.
Also, A.J. Brown, Jalen Hurts, look what they did. And they had Devontae Smith out there with them, too. I think it's imperative. I mean, everybody knows this, especially if you're going to decide to stick with Justin Fields, which it does if that's the way that it's going as it's unfolded in your mock. 100% you've got to give him some weapons to work with. And pairing that with DJ Moore, I think all of a sudden gives you some legit weapons on the outside. And I also think that Justin Fields showed enough improvement this year that it was, okay, we can work with this. We can build around this. And I know people always think that there's a surefire, this is a franchise quarterback and he's going to be a superstar. And that's what most people are going to look at Caleb Williams and say, slam dunk. It's never that.
Never.
That's never the case. So at least you know Justin Fields. Like, I feel you know the floor, and there's still tremendous upside. So I kind of don't mind it at all for the Bears to say, we're good. We're going to get some equity through the draft. We're going to trade out of this pick, and we're going to build around Justin Fields. I think it's a pretty smart play.
DK, I put Ryan on the spot over breakfast. We were talking about it. If it is Marv Jr. And DJ Moore, immediately, day one of camp, where do you put that in terms of the wide receiver duos in this league? You're looking at Miami, obviously pretty serious. It's probably going to come apart in Cincinnati with T. Higgins due to be paid. There's other teams, but you look at what DJ Moore did for the Chicago Bears in that offense, and you add a talent like Marvin Harrison Jr.
I think it's absolutely top 5, maybe top 3 or 4, but I think it also comes into play with we need to see Marvin Harrison Jr. make that jump. And all those guys, it's again, kind of the similar conversation we were just having around Caleb Williams, that it does, it's always looks like it's a surefire. Marvin Harrison Jr. looks like the complete package. We were talking earlier before the set. I wouldn't be opposed to having one of the guys a little bit lower.
They picked 9th as well, the Chicago Bears. Too.
Yeah, so I wouldn't hate it because you could also get a Roma Dunze, you get a Malik Neighbors, a Keon Coleman even a little bit later, my Florida State guy. This is a deep draft with wide receivers, so they've got some choices to make, and I think they'll probably take Marvin Harrison Jr. I mean, it's just one of those ones that just looks too easy to make, and it's a safe pick that does have a tremendous upside as well. Plus, not to mention, he's been around the program, watched his dad prepare, and he kind of gets it. I think that makes that transition easier too.
That will also leave the pick of the quarterbacks beyond Williams for number 3. The Patriots likely to go quarterback. What direction do you see them going? This most recent mock takes us to the reigning Heisman Award winner.
Alex Van Pelt's the new offensive coordinator, joining Gerard Mayo, the new/old head coach. He was there on the defensive side before he took over for Bill Belichick. I went with Jaden Daniels, and this is a conversation I've been having for months now. I've talked to folks in the league that they don't say it's crazy that Jaden could potentially go over Drake May, and I'm interested in what you think about that, DK, because no player took bigger strides this fall than Jaden Daniels in terms of helping his draft stock, in terms of the way he played at LSU, Heisman Trophy winner, obviously. And my comp for him is Lamar Jackson, but a few pounds lighter. But if that's the direction you're going, and you have an MVP candidate in Lamar Jackson, and he went 32nd in the draft. They had the Ravens trade up to get him. Should have gone much higher in retrospect. I think it's easier to see how good Jaden Daniels can be at the next level than Drake May. Now, there are reasons. The offensive line was struggling at UNC, didn't have the same playmakers, so on and so forth. But there's no excuses need to be made for Jaden Daniels in my mind. So that's where I went.
So I don't like this move at all because I'm a Drake May guy. I like him a lot. He's my favorite quarterback in this draft, but I don't have enough oomph to say take him number 1. I think it's got to be Caleb Williams. I think that's just one that you could get fired over if you don't make it. But I would love to be the team drafting 2nd or 3rd of the quarterbacks and having Drake May fall to my lap. We'll see where he goes. Jaden Daniels, I do worry about durability. You mentioned that he's a little bit smaller than Lamar Jackson. I also think he's a sliver slower. I mean, Lamar Jackson is otherworldly as far as his football speed on the field. Jaden Daniels is electric, but I don't think we've seen a quarterback since Mike Vick run the ball the way that Lamar Jackson does. And I wonder how that translates to the next level. And then durability becomes a factor,
and Drake's a great athlete, too.
Yeah, and Drake's a really good athlete, too.
That's the conversation to be had. Caleb 1. Then it's who's the second quarterback. Is it Jaden Daniels? Is it Drake May? So in this exercise, Drake May falls down to 6 to the Giants, DK. So you talked about it. He may actually maybe secretly benefit if he drops to 6 and go, oh, I get Dable, I get Saquon, I get some weapons. I maybe succeed Daniel Jones.
And maybe get a redshirt year. A year to kind of watch and gradually get acclimated to the NFL. I love this for the Giants. I mean, and also Daniel Jones is not that bad of a deal, getting paid $37.5 million, kind of as a lame duck quarterback and be that mentor. But I think the upside of Drake May is tremendous. I think he's everything you want. I remember going back, his first big game where they were kind of in a shootout was against App State, and watching that film, it was 63-62 or something like that when the final, when the final score went off, and saw him. It was only his second start, and saw his comfort within the system, the pocket awareness, getting deep through his progressions, and there's a running ability that's there, but a very smooth, effortless throwing motion and elevating the team around him. North Carolina last season had a huge season, stepped up there, were in the top 10, even some talked about playoffs. The season kind of trailed off at the end, but he has lifted and elevated that North Carolina program, and I've talked to him. I think he's everything you kind of want in your franchise quarterback. You roll him out there, the New York media, they'll be oohing and ahhing over what he could potentially be. I think it's a great spot.
No, I agree 100%. And one of the things I keep coming back to, because to your point, he could be QB1. Caleb, obviously, I don't think Jaden gets in that conversation, but certainly the top 3. But here's what I keep coming back to, Danny. 5 years from now, if I said Jaden Daniels ended up being the best quarterback, you probably wouldn't be surprised, because we have no idea. This is so incredibly difficult to sort through. And the other thing you have to guard against, because the season's been over for 6 weeks now, as we get through the process, 79 days, as you mentioned, Joe, to the draft, we can talk ourselves into and out of players. And the other thing that's worth noting, and Danny was on set last year, and you said after speaking to C.J. Stroud, I had a different takeaway when I talked to him in person about who he was as a player. And clearly you were onto something, because I translated in the fall.
So there was a presence about him that
Right.
I didn't think translated in interviews that you would see throughout the season, post-game or whatever it was, even features. But when he sat with the set on, I don't know if you remember what happened. I said, tell me about your offensive line. And he started to talk. He named every single offensive lineman, and I kind of loudmouth, I kind of interject, I cut people off sometimes. I cut him off before he got to the 5th offensive lineman, and he said, hold on a second. He said, he named one more offensive lineman. He's like, I got to make sure I give all my guys love. There was a confidence there on a set, on live TV, to say, no, hold on. I'm in charge here. And I like that stepping up to the plate, and it really did. Just in interacting with him just in the 2 minutes off air, you get a feel where there's a presence, and clearly we saw that unfold where he commanded the whole locker room in Houston and had one of the best seasons we've seen.
Gentlemen, appreciate it. It's Super Bowl season, mock draft season, mock turtleneck season. DK.
This is full.
That's full.
This is
All right,
full
we're going full. With the first pick, Ryan Wilson is the co-host. By the way, let the good folks know, are you doing double duty this week with the Pick 6 podcast? Are you dark this week?
Of course, Tommy T. Double Duty did a podcast this morning with Dr. Spielman, and we're doing one on Thursday. We're going to do a little mock draft live, so check that out wherever you get your podcast, Tommy.